This is the Illuminate Podcast, a Sandy Boy production. Each week on the Illuminate Podcast, the hosts will bring you insightful conversations and stories of people who are illuminating their own lives through their business, work, community, family, and world. Hello, and welcome to the Illuminate Podcast. I'm your host, Emma Benner, and today I'm sharing episode 69 with Molly Reeser. Molly is the founder and executive director of Camp Casey. Camp Casey is a nonprofit organization that provides cost-free horseback riding programs to children with cancer and life-threatening illnesses in Michigan. Molly has a really incredible story about how she started Camp Casey as just a one-day event to honor the life of a young girl named Casey who had passed away from cancer, who Molly met while teaching riding lessons at a barn. This started as just a one-day event back in 2004, but as you can tell, 16 years later, Molly continues to run the programs and impact the lives of so many children and their families. In this episode, Molly shares that story about meeting Casey and the impact that Casey has had on her life, how she started Camp Casey, the programs that they offer and why they started the newest program, Lone Star Getaways, this year, the story of how Horsey House Calls started, and this story might be my favorite, and she also shares goals and dreams that she has for the organization. And before we get started with this episode, I do want to share about a new partner of the show, Finley's. Finley's was founded by two former special education teachers, and they make pet treats with just a few all-natural ingredients that your pets will love. They give 50% of their profits to initiatives that provide employment training, accessibility, health and wellness, and advocacy programs for people with disabilities. They are doing such incredible things for the community, and they are just a company that I really, really love. And you all can use code Illuminate20 to get 20% off your order at getfinleys.com. I recently grabbed the peanut butter banana crunchy biscuits for my own dog, and I know he will love them, so I hope you grab a couple bags of treats for your own pets as well. All right, I am so excited to bring you my conversation with Molly Reeser. All right, today on the podcast, I am so excited to be joined by Molly Reeser.
Yeehaw! Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. So, Molly, you are the executive director of Camp Casey. Can you tell me more about yourself and what Camp Casey is to get started here?
Certainly. So I'm actually the founder of the organization. I act as the executive director as well, but I would say I'm most proud of the fact that I founded this program now 16 years ago. So Camp Casey itself is a nonprofit organization. We bring horses into the lives of children with cancer, sickle cell disease, and other life-threatening illnesses. And we do this in a variety of different ways. Our most famous and unique program, I would describe it as, is called Horsey House Calls. And this is where we deliver a horse and horse camp and an experience of horse camp to the doorsteps of children who are sick. So it's interesting right now going through COVID where everybody is homebound and everybody feels, immunocompromised and at risk for, being infected. That's sort of what our children and the families that we've been working with for over a decade feel every day. So it's not just COVID that they are trying to avoid bringing into their home, but it's the, common cold and anything else that can really disrupt their child's health and safety. That's their everyday. These are families we're working with that are vulnerable in lots of ways. And the kids that we serve don't get to go to summer camp, not in 2020, not in 2019, 2018. They have, since their diagnosis and depending on their treatment schedule, they really are homebound. And we are bringing horse camp and a really wonderful activity right to their doorsteps. We knock on the door and there's a horse, and we stay for the afternoon and have a really wonderful experience with the family and friends and neighbors. And I can get into Horsey House Calls a little bit more as we chat, but that's one of the programs that we operate. We also provide cowboy campouts, which is an all-expense paid horseback riding vacation. This year we rolled out a new program called Lone Star Getaways, which links families with privately owned vacation rental properties. And then our final program is called Outlaw Outings, where we provide one-day recreational events for vulnerable children and their families. So that in a nutshell is Camp Casey. And yeah, I can say I'm just very proud to be a part of it and to have had it take my life in the direction that it has.
Yeah, you're not only a part of it, but you're really the brains behind it and everything within it. So,
well, I wouldn't say, it's definitely it's interesting because I like to describe Camp Casey as this sort of force and this spiral of good that I've been so fortunate to really be a part of. But at this point, I'm really like a, cog in the machine. I go where the organization guides me to go. It's a very guided organization, and I'm not alone. I work with the most talented team, and I would say I'm like probably like the lowest in terms of the brains behind the operation. I think I sort of, I had the drive and the tenacity and the kind of annoying personality to kind of keep it going and start it and want to get it off the ground. But now that it has been birthed, it really has grown into its own being that I'm really just kind of along for the ride. We get very punny at Camp Casey with all the horse, wild ride and all that. Yeah. But I will say I am very much like a part of, the journey that the organization has taken me on. And so I cannot take credit. I'm not trying to just be humble. I'm just saying I am one of the very many, very passionate team members who are working to Camp Casey's to reach its ultimate potential.
Oh, I just don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. But let's talk about the inspiration behind Camp Casey and about that little girl, Casey herself.
Sure. So I went to Michigan State University. I was studying journalism. I actually have a journalism degree, which, I can argue that I kind of use it because I do a lot of writing in my job. But I was not the best student. I barely graduated, honestly, looking back. And I was always very interested in just other things that I could do and be a part of and grow. And my mind had always felt like I was ready to just start something and do something. And I loved horses and I loved animals. I always have, and I always will. And prior to going to Michigan State, I worked at a horse camp. And I was a horse riding instructor and a counselor for kids there. And so when I got up to school, I wanted to have a job where I could be outdoors and I could be around horses again. And Michigan State happens to be in a pretty rural part of Michigan. And there was a horse farm nearby that in the state news, they were looking for some barn help. So I started working there, mucking horse stalls, and to the non-horse people, that means like picking up horse manure. That was my job. That was kind of to earn my extra money while going to school. And it was there working at the barn that I met a little girl named Casey. And she was little. She was about 10 years old when we met. And she was just a fireball. This girl was like funny and sarcastic and cute and just really had like a really great personality. And she got to know everybody who was there. She would talk to anyone with ears. And that really she kind of reminded me of a younger version of myself because she just didn't care about what she looked like or what she said or how anything came off. She was just herself and just a really, really sweet little girl. And also we related to one another because she had such a strong love for animals. She was not only there to be around the horses, but she was there because she just loved the outdoors and being around animals. And she and I really bonded because she used to collect these little baby birds that would fall from the rafters. It was like total survival of the fittest sort of thing. These baby birds were not long for this world and they would fall from the rafters in the barn. And she didn't care if there was a riding lesson going on or somebody was in the arena doing something that they, could not be interrupted, she just, walked her way in there, and she would pick up these baby birds and she would bring them to me because I was the only sucker that was like, yes, I'll take them home and nurse them to life. And I tried really hard. I think I brought probably 6 or 7 baby birds home in the time that I knew Casey, and I would feed them cat food and make my whole like college apartment smell like cat food. And they ended up, none of them I don't think ever made it, but I never told Casey that. They always, and my story back to her was, oh yeah, Tweety got very strong and now he flew off. But I had like a graveyard in my apartment backyard. But so we bonded over that. And something else about her that was obvious was that she was going through cancer treatment. She didn't have her hair. Her face was sort of bloated from the treatment that she was, enduring. And she would be gone for days, sometimes weeks at a time, because she had a surgery or she was in the middle of treatment, so not well enough to be around the barn. And again, seeing like that, you can only just imagine that visual of a little girl who's going through active cancer treatment, saving the lives of these little baby birds who like really didn't have a chance. It was like this beautiful, I don't know, just a really heartwarming and also sort of gut-wrenching experience. So it was really easy to fall in love with Casey and her big heart. But she was really sick, and it was something that I had never been exposed to. I was, 18 or 19 years old, and I was just in my own world of, thinking that I was just the only person on this earth. And, you're a very egocentric person at that age. And so to be witness to somebody who reminds you of yourself, and it has her whole life ahead of her, and she's just so ill, it was like a real eye-opening experience for me. I never knew that kids could really get cancer, which is like kind of strange to even hear myself say now because it's such a part of my everyday. But Casey was the first exposure for me that this was not like an old person disease. Cancer wasn't something you get when you're in your 90s. It was something that a child could be going through. So there was a real like awakening experience for me getting to know Casey. And I will say that she was just like a force at the barn. Everybody knew her. Everybody was friends with her. And she just brought this like beautiful spirit to where we all, worked or where people had their horses. It was a wonderful, feeling that she brought to the barn. So she passed away about a year and a half after I got to know her. And obviously it was like devastating. We all were like, there was like this silence, this like deafening silence from her being gone. And we just all wanted to do something to honor her memory. All of us, those who worked at the barn, there were boarders, those who kept their horses there, the owners of the facility, everybody thought, let's do something. We need to recognize that Casey's memory, lives on in some way. So different ideas got thrown about. I remember like some of the other young women wanted to like pool our money and buy a park bench and put her name on it under a tree, or plant a tree, or walk in a 5K for pediatric cancer research or something. And I just remember like hearing all these ideas floating about. Nobody really was like actually organizing anything. And also the ideas that everyone was coming up with, I was like, that's boring. That doesn't represent this little like Spitfire girl, like it just everybody's ideas. I thought I could do it better. So I went to the owners of the barn and I said, hey, I have an idea and I'd really like you to get behind this. I'd like you to let me have your facility for one day and your school horses. They had 5 horses that were suitable for children. And I said, I want to go to the hospital where Casey received treatment and invite other kids to come out here and enjoy one day of riding. And I sort of had this idea that I would mock up like a camp, like a horse camp, but it would be just for one day. And we would call it Camp Casey, but the idea was not to have an ongoing thing. It was like to have just a one-time gig, and that was going to be it. And of course, the owners of the barn they were also parents, and they had hearts, and they were compassionate people, and it was like a no-brainer. Of course, take over, do this. So I went to the hospital, and I put up flyers, and I had this one day in mind that we were going to have not only the children who were going through treatment, but we also wanted to invite the brothers and sisters, the mom and dads, grandma and grandpa, whoever wanted to come out, because I saw that Casey would it wasn't just for her. It wasn't only her therapy that she got out of being at the barn. Her mom and dad were out there all the time. Her brother would come out there. It was like family therapy for everybody. So I wanted to keep that going. And, so I put up flyers at the hospital. I think I put like $200 of pizza and arts and craft supplies on like the emergency credit card that my parents gave me to go to school.
Oh, no.
And,
that's awesome.
And I had my boyfriend out there, you know, and he's now my husband actually, but he was an art student at the time. And I was like, you're going to be our arts and craft king. And I had him doing crafts with the kids. And then I had my other friends. My best friend was, you know, helping with the grooming lesson. And I think I quickly like showed her how to groom a horse and how to teach the kids how to do that. And so it was a very like bootleg put together thing. But it was fun, and the sun was shining that day. We had over 80 people come out. We had 20 children, and then all of their like friends and families. And it was just this celebratory day for Camp Casey. All of Casey's family were there. We brought in, you know, of course, the pizza that I put on my parents' emergency credit card. And we just had a beautiful afternoon, and we felt we had appropriately honored Casey's life. And then from there, it was like, okay, now we can move on, and we can feel that we honored her, and we did something much bigger than putting a park bench, you know, under a tree that no one's going to ever sit on, you know, or if they do, you know, it just, we felt the impact was, or I felt like it was much bigger for these kids to have had one day to have the same sort of joy that horses brought to Casey, you know, bestowed on them. So, but that was it. Then I was going to move on and continue going through college and getting a degree, and then moving to New York City and becoming like the, you know, Carrie Bradshaw, Sex and the City writer, and live in a really cool high-rise apartment. I had this like fantasy life like sort of planned out for me, that would happen obviously much later. But that was all of course interrupted when about a week after that day, the Camp Casey day we had in 2004, I received a letter, and it was addressed to the barn, and the barn owner handed it to me. She said, you got mail here. It's kind of odd. And I opened it up, and it was from this little boy named David, and he was only 4, and he was also in treatment for brain cancer, which was what Casey had. And it said, thank you for the best day of my life. And I saw it, and I was like, well, we got to do this again. Like, so it made it so that this was the best day of this little boy's life. Like, how can we say that was like, it was almost like, I was like, oh no, we got to do this again. Like, this isn't, you know, we can't have this kind of impact and just have it go kaput. So we got to actually bring it somewhere. So I again approached the owners of the barn, and I was like, yeah, you know how I told you it was going to be a one-time thing? I want to do it again, and I want to do it monthly. So on a monthly basis, they allowed me very generously. They gave me their land and their horses and the ability to operate this program. And we brought out a new group of people every time. And it was just this beautiful celebration once a month. And it was something that I looked forward to. All of my friends looked forward to it. I started getting a little bit more savvy in terms of not spending my own money, but reaching out to pizza places that could donate a few pies to us. And, you know, it didn't cost us anything except for some time. And like I said, I was not the most focused scholar. So I had some extra time on my hands to put it together. And so we did this until I graduated. And, so it was about 3 years that we ran this program. And then when I graduated, I was like, okay, I had that like who moved my cheese moment where I had to figure out where my life was going to go. And there was just nothing that I felt passionate about the way that I felt passion for organizing Camp Casey days. And so, you know, I thought, okay, I can go to law school. I can like get a job. I could like really make my parents happy and like get health benefits and things. But I was like, you know, I kept coming back to Camp Casey, and I kept coming back to how good it felt and how I not only loved the impact that it was making and seeing the kids so happy and reading the letters that we would get, you know, the week after they were served, but also just the feeling of building something and putting it together and going on this constant scavenger hunt for like, you know, who will give us the, you know, free goodie bags to give to the kids. It was like a game all the time, and it was so much fun. I woke up in the morning thinking about it. I went to bed thinking about it. It was like I saw such potential, and I had been doing research and learned that there was really no other organized group doing anything like this. There was no, I mean, horses are wildly therapeutic, and there's therapeutic horseback riding for those who have physical and mental, disabilities, but there was no sort of organized horseback riding program for those who needed the emotional help that I felt that we could provide, and definitely nothing for kids with cancer, which is in itself a very underserved population. So I saw the need, and I knew that we had the horsepower, no pun intended, in the college campus that was nearby and in the farm. So I did I think the bravest thing of all, and I sat my parents down once I graduated at dinner, and I said, "Hey, I'm very fortunate, and I feel grateful to you for helping me through school and, making all the sacrifices you had to make to give me an education. But I'm going to waitress for a little while and see if I can build Camp Casey, and I don't think that they would admit this now, but they were a little like, huh? What? Like, so you're not going to have what, what about like a 401k? What about health benefits? What about, you're cut off, and they did cut me off, and it was okay because I said, you know what, I can do this. I can waitress. And I did. The plan was 1 year of hustling, 1 year of waitressing or doing what I needed to do to see if this could work. And then if 1 year went by and I still wasn't able to turn this into anything, I was going to just go get a conventional job and, cut my losses. But 1 year turned into 6 years. So it wasn't
now 16.
Yeah, exactly. And I now can look back and say, thank goodness I stuck with it. And, doors were closing left and right, but then there were other portals that I could get into, and I sort of persevered and kept going, and I hustled. I taught fitness for a while, and I waitressed, and I worked banquets where I was I served it was anything. There was not Uber at the time, but if there was, I would have been an Uber driver. It was no matter what job I could take, I was working my tush off. I was just, from sunrise to sunset, I had something going on. And then in between, I was working on building Camp Casey. I was taking meetings with anybody who would meet with me. There were people that were like, who are you? What do you want? You're 22 years old. I can't, there's nothing
just
I can help you with.
Yeah.
But I gathered business cards, and I followed up, and I wrote a lot of thank you notes to whoever would listen to my ideas. And it slowly grew and grew and grew. And I was able to convince enough people that they should believe in this dream. And as I was dreaming, I was building and working, and it ended up just evolving. And it really did. It was like I was able to put some water on a seed, and it just completely grew. And now I feel like I am catching up to it. We are now 16 years old. I was finally able to hire myself back in, I want to say it was 2012 or 2013.
Oh, wow. That must have been an incredible moment having the funds for that.
It was really wonderful because it felt like the last 6 years that I had been hustling had really paid off. And I will tell you, it took a while. I would still see I'd still get a call hey, there's a shift that needs to get picked up. And I was I kind of had to get myself out of that mindset. I don't need to be a nanny anymore. I don't need to do these things anymore. I actually have a job, and I was able to hire myself and one other young woman. And now we have a 4-person full-time staff, including myself. We have 23 seasonal employees. We have over 600 volunteers in our region. Then we have
600. Wow.
Yeah, we have a large volunteer pool that's very active. And then we also have a satellite program on the west side of our state. So we are in the Detroit region here. That's where we're headquartered. But then we have a satellite program in Grand Rapids on the west side of the state. So we are actually able to deploy our programs on the same day at the same time from 2 different hubs, which is really cool. So the program has just grown enormously, and it's made tremendous impact. We reach 1,600 participants a year. And even during the pandemic, we were able to continue our program. Yeah. And this is what's interesting is that at first we were kind of frozen when everything happened. We didn't know
everyone was
what this meant. But then after really having some more in-depth conversations with our hospital partners, it became clear that we have been delivering our programs to homebound immunocompromised children forever. So we were one of the only organizations that was actually completely set up to make this happen. We did have to make some amendments, like the Horsey House Call visits typically attract about 30 people, so it's a neighborhood event. We did have to start limiting it to just the child and the immediate family under one roof, and we were all masked up and took temperatures and made sure that we all safely socially distanced and did so leading up to the day. But we were able to make it happen. And in fact, what was kind of a silver lining to this year was that we were not only getting calls, of course, from our cancer, and we also serve the sickle cell population. So we always have cancer, sickle cell, and aplastic anemia, which are all in like sort of the blood disease family. Yeah. But we started getting calls from a lot of kids who could not go on their wish trips because all the wish trips had been canceled. They could not go to their summer camps that had been canceled for kids with special needs and things like that. So this year we did something, we kind of took a large step that we've always had sort of on our vision board, but we made it happen, and that was that we opened our parameters to serving children with all life-threatening illnesses. So we saw children of all kind of walks of life, and it was something that I believe was, we never knew when the timing would be right for that because we never had the resources to make it. It was like, well, we have to draw the line somewhere. We're cancer and sickle cell and aplastic anemia, and eventually we'll open those parameters. This year, it was like we had no choice because the kids had no other options other than Camp Casey. So we were sort of in some ways, I don't want to use the word forced, but we really felt we had no choice but to open our program up to more kids. And it's been just the most wonderful decision we made, and it's something that we will be sticking with. So there's a little silver lining there to this strange year.
Yeah, that's so cool. So I'm curious, do you still work with that same barn that you started Camp Casey at, or now do you own your own land, your own horses, and have your own barn? Okay,
well, this is a great segue. So what we used to do in the early days of Camp Casey is we held these one-day events at different barns, and they were all privately owned facilities, and we actually would travel throughout Michigan so that we could open our geographic reach. Well, a problem that we kept running into, and this was probably in like 2005 or so, is that we would have this grandiose day planned. We would get all of the, vendors to donate their pizza and their crafts and all the goods. We'd have volunteers on staff, who were so generously giving their time, and we'd have a medical personnel on staff, a nurse or a doctor or a resident, volunteering his or her time. And of course, the barn itself allowing us to take over their facility for a day, which they were, having to take a cut in revenue because they were not able to offer their horseback riding lesson program that they might have had planned for that day. So it was a lot of moving parts and a whole lot of generosity coming together. None of it under our, control really. And then we would have the day planned, and it would be equipped to host 20 children, and maybe only 13 or 14 of the kids would show, and sometimes even fewer than that. Sometimes it would be like 8 or 9 kids would show, and it wasn't
just because they might have like medical
exactly
interruptions or schedule conflicts.
So gathering a group of immunocompromised children who are all under different treatment schedules at the same place at the same time is a problem. I mean, sometimes we would get lucky and we would have everybody, the stars would align, but other times it was like really disappointing for everybody, including the children, because we would have this whole day planned and we only had one of them a month. And it would just not coincide with their treatment schedule, because directly after, if you've ever known anybody who's had to endure chemotherapy, you feel like crap the days following. So, and your blood counts are low, and it would just be unsafe to be around the dirty things like horses and hay and dust if you are immunocompromised and your platelets are low. At one of these particular, and I guess I love telling this story because it just is such a testament to how we have been able to really turn terrible things into wonderful things. And I think that starts with Casey's death, where we were able to take this just devastating thing and turn it into something where it has it's made a positive impact on others' lives. And that has been a theme that has run so strong throughout the whole history of the organization. And Horsey House Calls, which is the program that brings horses to the homes of kids and is tailored to their treatment schedule and tailored to their independent experience and what they're going through, that was born out of something really awful that happened. And that was that we had one of these one-day Camp Casey events, and we had a little girl come, and she was only 4 at the time, and she had a sister who was 7. Her name is Kelly, and I like to preface when I tell this story that she is now like in her 20s, and she's beautiful, and she's thriving and doing wonderful, and just and she's alive and well.
Yeah.
But at the time she was very, very sick. She had rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a cancer of the soft tissue, and it's a highly malignant, fast-growing cancer. She was only 4 years old, and her little body was just going through just the terrors of chemo. It was awful.
Imagine. And for the family.
Oh my goodness. And her 7-year-old sister, whose life is completely like turned upside down. And, you know, the siblings go through a variety of emotions and issues having a sibling with cancer as well. I mean, there's a whole podcast that we could talk about that alone.
Yeah.
But
I imagine.
the family had come up to enjoy this one day of fun and respite and normalcy for their 2 girls, and they were both on the horse. I remember we were about an hour into the day, and they were on the horse, and the nurse we had volunteering with us came up and said, this little girl needs to get off the horse right now and go to the hospital. And she had a nosebleed. Her nose started bleeding. And if, you know, anybody who has kids or has been around kids, they pick their nose all the time, so they'll bleed. And it's like, you plug your nose or you stuff some tissue up there and you're fine. But for Kelly, this was an emergency because her platelets were low and she was at a place in her treatment where she could have bled to death. Her blood would not clot. So we had to immediately get her off the horse. And I will never forget, it was like nothing to get them off a horse. You know, I would think of my own children. I have a 6 and a 7-year-old little boys right now, and you know, you get them to try to stop playing their video games and they pitch a fit. You know, if you were to tell a typical child who was just sitting on the horse for the first, you know, 5 minutes and should have been there all day to get off that horse, you would think that there would be a temper tantrum thrown. But these children were so ingrained in this life of disruption. It was such a normal part of their life that it was just like, okay. And they got off the horses, and they got in the car and they went to the closest hospital, and that's where Kelly had to endure a blood transfusion, and she had to spend the day in the hospital. And it was like, and her whole family is there. Here, they're supposed to be doing something wonderful, and cancer once again comes between that, you know? So of course I'm feeling terrible, and we had nothing. This was late summer. This was late August, and we had nothing else planned. Usually our season we're in Michigan, so it can snow in September, you know? So we had nothing else planned for later on that season. So it wasn't like I could say, oh, don't worry about it, come to the next one. I wanted to do something though to make it right for this family who missed out on this fun day. And it kept happening. Things like this just kept happening over and over again. So while this is going on, I'm grappling with how are we going to amend this program to make it so that do we offer it more frequently? Well, that's asking a lot out of the barn owners. And it's expensive for, you know, pizza places to be delivering this all the time. And how do we make this work, you know, for these kids who can't come or who are disrupted by their treatment schedule? So this is in the back of my head, and I'm working with the family who I talk to the mom, and we talk about, you know, I keep in touch with them, and I learned that Kelly is in a much more stable part of her treatment. This is now early October, and we happen to have this beautiful weekend coming up, and it was one of those unusual October days where it's just like 70 degrees and sunny and just a beautiful day. And I called my girlfriend Ashley, who had a horse, and my friend Madison, who had a truck and a trailer. And I said, and the horse that Ashley had was perfect. This was like a bomb-proof horse. And I was like, why don't we bring Sonora, the horse, to Kelly and Lindsay's house? We'll do a Camp Casey visit. You know, we'll kind of mock Camp Casey. We'll bring crafts, we'll bring pizza, we'll bring the horse right to their house. And my friends were, of course, like, well, yeah, let's go. Let's get in the car, you know? And so we hit the road. We knocked on the door, and there was a horse on the doorstep. And these girls just, like, thankfully, Sonora was like maybe half deaf or something, because they just screamed like so loud, and they were so excited. It was like we were bringing like I describe it as like we had the publisher's clearinghouse check, you know, like we were like surprising the family with like $10 million or something, but we had a horse, like not a check. It was a horse, you know, in which to, you know, a 4 and a 7-year-old was probably way better than $10 million, you know? We ended up telling them, meet us out back. And they came out in the backyard and we gave them rides and we brought in pizza and we had crafts and we basically did a Camp Casey day, but just for this family. And it was so special and it was intimate and the neighbors all came out and were like, what's going on? You know, and it was like these kids for the first time were being pointed at and talked about because they were being celebrated and not because they were standing out because, you know, Kelly looked different than everybody. So it was just so special. Oh my gosh, it was just one of the best days, you know, that I've ever experienced. It was so much fun. But during this visit, we're like between like the, you know, play set and the sidewalk, and this gentleman drives by and he says, what is this? And he was a neighbor, so he knew that Kelly was sick. He knew the family was going through hard times. And I said, we're Camp Casey and this is a Horsey House Call. And it was just kind of like something that I just like pulled out, you know, it was not anything that was really planned. It was sort of just came together. And he said, is that what you guys do? This is like a nonprofit. This is your organization. I said, no. I said, it's not what we do, but this is what we would do if we had like the equipment to make it happen. Because this whole time I'm thinking, this is what we should do. Instead of having the children come to us, we need to go to them. We need to make this as turnkey as possible for these families who are, you know, have so many things going on. Let's make this easy on them and bring this program. I mean, if you think about like what's easier, going out with your family for pizza or having pizza delivered to your house, you know, it's like, let's make this easy on the families who are already struggling through so much. So the whole time this is happening, I'm just having these visions of this is what we're supposed to be doing. And so when this gentleman said this to me, you know, is this what you guys do? It was like, no, but this is what we could do if we had the resources to make it happen. And he said, well, let's meet. He gave me his business card. He said, I want to hear more about this. Or I don't know, it might have worked out the other way where I said, let me tell you more. Because you know, like I said, it was like if you have ears and get within like 5 feet of me, I need to like talk to you about my dreams. And so I met up with this gentleman a few weeks later and I shared with him this vision and how this would work. And he said to me, how much would something like that cost? And I said, and I just sort of did mental math. Again, this was like something I was so wildly unprepared for any sort of real, you know, questions. I just had a dream. I didn't know the details. And so I said $50,000. And I just really pulled that out of thin air because I sort of estimated, okay, a truck is at least $25,000 and you need a truck to pull a trailer, and the trailer is at least what, 10 or 15 grand.
Right, yeah.
And then there's going to be supplies and there's going to be a horse. I mean, and at the time I will tell you, Emma, we had probably like $400 in our bank account, which we felt we were rich because we had just done
nonprofits.
Yeah, the nonprofits. Oh, my account at the time probably was like, you know, I was probably like, right. I was probably being called into, you know, for my overdraft fees at the time. But the bank account of the organization was very low, but it was, you know, we just probably had a bake sale or a car wash or something. And that's why we had like, you know, $400 or $500 there. So when I said $50,000, I might as well have said $5 million. You know, it was like, I was dreaming, but he said, how much do you think this would cost? And I said, you know, $50,000. And I remember vividly thinking like, I should have said 5. I should have said 5,000 because I don't know who this guy knows or what his situation is. Maybe he would have whipped out his checkbook and written a check for $5,000 had I said a reasonable number. But I was sort of kicking myself. Like, why did you say 50? That was like too big. That was too scary of a number, because he didn't really respond with much other than, you know, well, this sounds like a really cool thing to be working toward. And then we went on our way, and I will tell you, like I said, I would meet with just anybody who would listen to me. So this wasn't unusual for me to have a meeting, have it go nowhere, and then, you know, meet with the next person. It was just like anybody who would listen to me, I would talk about this too. Meanwhile, I'm just building this idea of Horsey House Calls and what it would look like and how it would work and how beautiful this program could be. And I'm just writing down so much stuff having to do with Horsey House Calls. And I check the P.O. box. This is months later. And I open our P.O. box and there's just like, you know, junk mail or maybe like a bill here and there for something. And I open up an unmarked envelope and in it is a single check. There's nothing. There's no return address. There's nothing on this check. And it says anonymous in the memo. Mm-hmm. and it's for $50,000.
That is incredible.
But
so it has to be that guy, right?
Well, I mean, it's him and his buddy who he was able to pull in.
Wow.
But I honestly, like at the time though, I was like so stressed out about it because I'm sitting in my car and it's like, I can replay it in my head like it happened, this morning. I was like, oh no, now we have to do this. Like now this is like, because I had been thinking about it so much, but it was such a pipe dream. And so the fact that now we had this money that that was like, now there's accountability. Now we actually have to, I had like a waitressing shift scheduled in an hour. Like how was I going to do this? Like this is like too much money now. I was terrified and I just studied this check and I was just like, and I was like shaking, like, oh, I mean, my initial response was not excitement. It was panic, and fear.
Because there's the pressure of other people buying into it too. So
exactly. I couldn't let this person down.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody believed in me now, somebody actually wanted to see this happen and now I needed to make it happen. And it was just terrifying and I was paralyzed with fear and I just was staring at this check and I look at the date of the check. I'm like just studying every like inch of this piece of paper. And I noticed the date and it was August 26th. And that would have been Casey's 17th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay.
That's perfect.
I was like, this is her gift to us. This is her. This is her giving a gift it's a birthday present. So that month, I want to say, or like that early September, we bought a truck. We got a trailer. We were able to get a horse. And we hit the road that following summer. So we had all of the season to really prepare and figure it out and get the infrastructure in place. But that June, we hit 8 Horsey House Calls. So we did 8 that first year. The following year, we had 15. The following year, I want to say we hit 20. And then from the following year on, we've had 30 Horsey House Calls in Southeast Michigan. So that, just to put it into perspective, because we go out from June through September, it's 3 to 4 visits a week that we're going on. No, so it's just the summertime.
Okay,
okay. Yeah, we can only go from June through September just because it becomes dangerous to go in the winter. That's why we have other programs that we operate throughout the winter time. But we have 30 in Southeast Michigan, and then we recently opened up a satellite program in Grand Rapids on the west side of the state where we are deploying at the same time. So we have one going on in Grand Rapids, the same time one is going on in Detroit. So it's a really beautiful, evolution that has taken place, and this program has just grown tremendously. And it's just, like I said, I do believe that Casey has guided it through and through, and I'm so proud of Horsey House Calls. It's just one of the 4 programs that we run, but it definitely has a special place in my heart because of just how organically it grew and how unique it is, and just the service that it provides.
Yeah, it's such a special opportunity for so many kids. All right, I'm just stopping in here real quick to share a few things before getting back to my conversation with Molly Reeser. I'm really excited to share about the company Finley's. And Finley's was founded by 2 former special education teachers, and they're making pet treats with just a few all-natural ingredients that your pets will love. They have some really fun flavors that your pets can try, including peanut butter pumpkin crunchy biscuits, peanut butter banana, blueberry coconut crunchy, apple and cinnamon, salmon, and so many others. There's definitely a flavor that your pet will love. And what I really love is that they give 50% of their profits, that's half of their profits, to initiatives that provide employment training, accessibility, health and wellness, and advocacy platforms for people with disabilities. This company is just doing so many great things, so I just love supporting them because of all that they're giving back and doing for the community and all the opportunities that they're providing for individuals with disabilities. So you all can use code Illuminate20 to get 20% off your order at getfinleys.com. And lastly, before we get back to my conversation with Molly, we do have a listener survey for the Illuminate podcast that we would love if you filled out. We want to hear from you to help better the show in the coming year, and I will put a link to the survey in the show notes and would love if you took just a few minutes to fill that out. All right, let's get back to my conversation with Molly. Do you want to talk about some of the other programs that you put on as well, the other 3?
Yeah, so Cowboy Campouts is our second signature program. And when I say signature program, the signature programs are ones that the families can only participate in one time, and they need to choose either a Horsey House Call or a Cowboy Campout. And really this is done because the need is overwhelming. And, you know, the demand outweighs our ability to serve more than one child, or one child more than once with one of our signature programs that are quite expensive because it's completely free for the kids and the families, but none of it's free for us. I mean, it's very costly to run the program. Our insurance alone would just make your head spin. So, which is an important thing to have, but it's a very expensive program to operate.
When you're working with 1,500-pound animals, the liability is there.
Yes, and there's nothing like this. This isn't like insuring a restaurant. I mean, it's very interesting how we are insured and how we are the safeguards that we have to keep. But
I couldn't imagine.
So we only have one, and even upkeeping the truck and the trailer and just how we operate it's costly. So we only offer it to one time per diagnosis. If the child relapses, they are able to have a signature program again, but we hope that never happens, of course, even though it does.
Oh, yeah.
But Cowboy Campouts is our second signature program, and this is where we provide an all-expense-paid horseback riding vacation for 20 families a summer. And we do this 10 families at a time. So we will take 10 families who are all going through similar circumstances on an all-expense-paid horseback riding getaway. There's a dude ranch just north of Muskegon, which is another big city in Michigan, that is really cool. It's this awesome dude ranch resort, and we rent out 10 really beautiful cabins that have, they're very fancy. They have like little kitchens in them. They're all handicap accessible. They have like whirlpools and, flat screen TV. They're air conditioned. They're really, really nice. And I have to say that because we're working with children who are immunocompromised. And sometimes when we call and we talk to the families, they go, oh, this is such a cool opportunity, but my kids can't be camping right now. And it's like, no, this is glamping. This is it's in the woods and you're unplugged and you're like having bonfires and hay rides and horseback riding, but it's definitely a really glamorous experience that we're providing. So we give the families it's a long weekend. They arrive Friday late afternoon and they stay until Sunday early evening. And that's done intentionally so that the families who have already exhausted all of their vacation time from work because they've had to care for their sick child are able to come up and take a carefree weekend. They don't have to think about the activities, planning anything, paying for anything. They simply pack and show up. And if they can't even do that, if they have a hard time, affording the gas to get there, we'll cover that for them. Or we've rented cars for people who have not had a vehicle that would be able to get them there. So, we make it as easy on the family as we possibly can to just unplug, and they get to enjoy a vacation during a time when they would probably likely not be in a position to not only plan for something like that because it's so emotionally exhausting what they're going through, but pay for it. I mean, no matter how wealthy the families are who are strucken with this terrible luck, they are now financially strapped because they've had to take time off of work. They've had to, some of them lose their jobs. The medical expenses are just outrageous. And, they would never be thinking, wow, we really should plan a vacation for our family right now, even though they desperately need that time away and just to be away from the four walls that they're used to looking at, under such tumultuous times. Further, they're able to interact with other families who are going through the same thing that they're going through or have been through or are either further along in treatment or a little behind in treatment. So they can either act as a mentor to the families who are newly diagnosed, or they can get the advice and the mentorship from families who are a little bit further along and can give them some of that guidance and reassurance and help and resources. And we're not sitting around the campfire saying, okay, guys, now it's time to talk about cancer. But 100% of the time it comes up. and it comes up in a very natural way, and they become lifelong friends with each other. And I know this because we all become lifelong friends with each other, and we do send for Camp Casey staff to facilitate the weekend and make sure we kind of serve as their, maitre d's, and making sure that if they need something, if they need more towels, they come to us. They don't even have to bother the front desk. We serve as their kind of, staff that weekend, and we'll babysit if mom and dad want to go on a trail ride because they haven't had a minute to themselves to, have resurrect some of the romance between them, or have a date. We will babysit the kids and take them to the craft barn while mom and dad go riding off into the sunset on a horseback ride. They eat delicious meals. We sing campfire songs. We roast s'mores. They go on trail rides. It's just a beautiful weekend away that we're able to give to 20 families every year. This year, unfortunately, COVID did disrupt that. We were unable to operate that program safely, so we did have to pull the plug on it just for a year. We're hoping that we get back to it, hopefully 2021, if not 2022. We knew that, and this again, here's that theme of, some silver linings, is that, and like some really great things that can come from lousy things, is that we panicked for a second, and then we figured, because we do all of our fundraising the year before. So right now I'm fundraising as much as I can for 2021. So in 2019, we had secured all of our funding for 2020. So here we had, and that program is expensive to operate. It costs about $25,000 a year to take the 20 families on this trip. So we had money that we didn't know how, it wasn't like we had no idea how to spend it, but we had commitments that we had made to our donors and to our supporters. And we had families signed up and ready to go that we could not provide that experience to them safely. So we got really innovative and creative, and we came up with what is now a new program that we are hoping to keep permanent in our organization, which is the Lone Star Getaway program. Instead of bringing the families all together on this all expense paid vacation, we instead scholarship them to go on independent vacations. We teamed up.
Cool.
Yeah. So we used Airbnb and VRBO, and I kept calling it Carebnb, even though that didn't catch on. We're like, the staff was like, no, we're calling it Lone Star Getaways. This is it goes along way better with our theme. But, I still internally like to call it Carebnb, but I don't know if Airbnb would maybe sue me for that. But we ended up teaming up with generous vacation property owners, and this year was wonderful because we did have a budget that we were able to throw their way. So we were able to actually pay for independent stays at Michigan vacation properties. So
that you connected with through Airbnb, or how did you connect with them?
Through Airbnb and VRBO.
So were you just sending random people messages?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we did. And we asked, for a break as much as as they could, but it was also prime time, and we were doing it really quickly. So a few times we did have to pay full price, but we spent about $1,000 per family, and that gave them an all expense, getaway where they could go with their family very safely to a vacation property, on a Michigan lake or in the woods, or there was one family I think we sent to a little farmhouse where they got to feed chickens in the morning and interact with animals. So while it didn't have the horse, experience that we like to bring, it did give the families that respite that they needed and that time away. A lot of the families we work with, their children later pass away, and we hear time and time again that this was the last happy memory they had as an entire family. These are the last photos that they were able to take all together, where they could feel they were actually enjoying the company of one another and not crying over the hardships they were going through. So it was important to us that we could still do that in some way, and I'm very proud that we were able to pull it off. So those are 3 of the 4 programs. And then our 4th program is Outlaw Outings. And Outlaw Outings was created in an effort to not have to say see ya never to these families once we serve them. And because it is so expensive and we can't, serve them more than once, we wanted to have some sort of ability to give them a way to reconnect with us, a way to not only stay in touch with us, but also to just kind of know that we are there for them throughout the year and also throughout the years. So Outlaw Outings is a program that operates year-round, and we provide one-day recreational events. So, for example, we'll take families on, we'll set up a day where we invite anybody who's ever been a part of Camp Casey from 2004 and on to join us to go on a horseback riding trail ride through a state park, where when they finish their ride, we'll have a lunch waiting for them, a barbecue lunch, and they can reconnect with the volunteers. They can reconnect with each other, and it becomes a little party that we have at a state farm. Or we will bring mothers and daughters to a spa, and we will have a day where they can get pampered and we connect with the spa. And we make sure the spa, is in a position to either donate or really help us out in some way. And they invite us in. Sometimes we'll go after hours, after the spa has closed down, and the moms and daughters will get their nails done and get a facial and get a pedicure and a massage. And we'll take families to professional sports games. We have a really wonderful relationship with the Detroit Pistons, where they will give us almost courtside seats for families that we serve throughout the year, and they get to high five the players and feel like real hot shots. And so the Outlaw Outing program is just a way for us to continuously stay in touch with the families, reconnect, and give them an opportunity to still remain a part of the Camp Casey family without having a repeat signature program.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
You must be, what does your schedule look? You must be putting in crazy hours.
Well, my schedule has definitely changed,
you have an awesome team too.
I was just going to say, my schedule has changed since becoming a mother, and I really try to operate the kind of organization that I envision a way for our organization, because we are grassroots and we do have control over the policies that we can put into place to set an example for other organizations and other businesses to hopefully follow suit, that will allow for a working mother to have the ability to be a working mother, because it's really hard. And that was something that I learned, shortly after I was hired. I think it was like the year I was able to finally have a paycheck was the same year that I was pregnant with my first child. And it was like, there was a whole other new obstacle for me to kind of overcome and figure out. And so we are a very progressive organization, and we work really, really hard, but we work, pretty uniquely in the way that remote work is sort of something that we have an office and we do get our work done, but there are often times where we are working very early mornings or very late evenings. But this kind of job, and I think this is probably the way it is for any nonprofit, especially in the grassroots, category, is that it's not really like a conventional job. It's a way of life. It's like everything I do, I have Camp Casey in mind, doing. If I go to a coffee shop and I order a coffee, it's like, I'm going, oh, maybe we could put a jar here and have a coffee, have a loose change collection. It's like, there's no time, and it's not just me. It's a passion. I will say it's really exciting though, because I like when people ask what I do. And I think any of the staff that I work with would say the same thing, that it's like, they're the only people that actually look forward to the question of like, so what do you do? Most people, if you sell insurance, you're like, oh, let's not talk about that. But it's something that we are all very proud of being able to, talk about. And we take a lot of like pride, being able to be a part of this and having this as our job. But it doesn't feel like a job. Clearly there are days where I have to do like, database entry or like bookkeeping or something that I'm just like, oh, this isn't super fun. But, for the most part, there's a lot of times where I am thinking or talking or working on my work that I'm choosing to do that because I enjoy it so much. And it's always growing and it's always evolving. Currently, we are working with this phenomenal group in Detroit. They're these older gentlemen they're in their 70s and 80s, and they are a group called the Buffalo Soldiers Heritage Association, and it's a group of African American cowboys who their mission is to spread awareness about the Buffalo Soldiers, which were the first ever part of the U.S. military, first cavalry in the U.S. military that were made up of all Black soldiers. And so it's really neat because we serve the sickle cell population, which are mostly African American children that we are seeing. And so we're working together to collaborate with them currently to start hosting some outlaw outings on their farm and using some of their horses and pull in some history into what we do, which is really exciting. So I guess I bring that up just to say that the organization is always evolving. We're always growing. We're always collaborating. And so it never feels like work. It feels like an adventure.
Yeah. And if there's one thing that's clear from this conversation is how passionate you are about the work. And I think that's something so special and makes it possible to do the work at all hours of the day and have it be on your mind so often.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. My neighbor the other day said, she goes, your job is just so cool. And I was like, yeah, I know. It's the coolest. Like, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to do something like if I would, there's, you know how there's, sometimes the security password, and hopefully I don't get like identity theft happening this way, but there's like a security password thing where they go like, what's your dream? Who was your high school boyfriend? What was the first make of your car? And like, what's your dream job? And that answer for me is always Camp Casey, because I couldn't even dream up of a better job. I mean, maybe if I had like Adele talent or something and I could be like like performer or something, that would be a dream job. But without having any natural ability, like talent like that, I would say that this is a dream job, and there was nothing I would ever change about that.
Oh, that's so special. What are your goals? Like, what are your goals for the next 5-10 years? Is there a goal to expand not internationally, throughout the nation, I should say?
Yeah, we've tried to figure out some sort of model to replicate Horsey House Calls in other regions. I think that I would love to see Horsey House Calls happening somewhere else. For a while, we had our sights set, and I say had just because the stuff kind of evolves and grows, and it's still in our sights, but I don't know if it's a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan, a 5-year plan, but we have talked about setting up a Horsey House Call program in the Charleston area where there's a large pediatric oncology community through MUSC in South Carolina, and Charleston's drivable. So we were thinking, well, let's drive our truck and trailer down there, and throughout the months that we cannot operate in Michigan, let's go from, September until May and then drive it right back up. So that's a goal that we've had in mind, is bringing Horsey House Calls to southern regions where we could go during times that the trucks and trailers are sitting still in Michigan collecting snow. We've also been hungry for our own home. I mean, we are sort of nomads. It's always funny and campy that we were able to say, like, when people ask, well, where is Camp Casey? We go, oh, we're everywhere. We're mobile. We're everywhere, which is wonderful because we've had no overhead. I mean, we don't have a barn to keep up. We don't even own our own horses. We operate by using privately owned horses. We lease them for the day. So we put the horses through a series of very rigorous evaluations, actually more than once a year or more than once a season. We put them through an evaluation process, and once they pass, they're then part of our hero herd. And we pay the horse owner every time we take that horse out. So we have a network of horses that we work with. So we don't have a barn. We don't have horses. We don't, to shoe and vet and feed and hay and all of those things. But at the same time, not having our own place does limit us. So I would say like a nearer goal would be to team up with an organization sort of like Buffalo Soldiers or another organization and collaborate and figure out a way that we can use a farm that might be already in existence and maybe erect an indoor arena or have our home base or something where we could then, on a year-round basis, when it is snowing outside, have children come and operate programs in the middle of the winter. So that's a goal that has been sort of on the vision board. But I will say that what's beautiful about Camp Casey is that it takes you on this ride. And so I can dream up all of these, wouldn't it be cool if, but the serendipitous happenings that just continuously come into my life or into somebody else's or that is really what ends up directing this ship. And I'm very fortunate and very, I'm humbled and very, happy to know that whatever the future brings, like that will be presented to us. And we just have to keep on doing what we're doing right now and keep working as hard as we can. And, it will all be presented to us. I'm so confident of that because I've seen that over and over again. How it plays out just to really, grow in a beautiful way, and not too fast and not too slow. So I guess that's one of the biggest challenges, though, is that sometimes I get so excited about something and I just want to do it and want this vision to happen. And quickly I learn that everything happens in the time that it's supposed to.
Yeah, what a beautiful thing that you've created and continued on for 16 years. It's so cool to think that it was a one-day event and stemming from Casey. So I have to ask, are you still in contact with Casey's family? Do they see what you've created
of course.
in the honor of their daughter?
Yes. So I'm very close to the family. I'm not only close to the Casey's family, but also the family that, allowed me to take over their barn for the day. I mean, over the 16 years, I've collected so many beautiful friends and those who have been real pillars in making this organization what it is. And Casey's family is first and foremost there. They sadly have lost 3 children. There's been they have a genetic thing going on. So, Casey was one of the 3 that they lost. And so they've experienced tremendous loss and horrible, things in their lives. And I do believe that they look at Camp Casey as a way to, her legacy lives on, and as a way to sort of have some peace knowing that her name has gone on to help so many other children. And not only the children, it's not only the kids, it's the parents, it's the siblings, it's the neighbors. It's bridging that gap, that discomfort gap that cancers can present, where neighbors don't want to ask their next door neighbor how they're doing because they're not prepared to deal with the answer. I mean, there's so many things that come from this. Children are being bullied at school. Well, they're not being bullied when they have a horse at their house. They're like the coolest kid on the block,
Oh, yeah.
Volunteers, lives have been enhanced. Marriages have come from Camp Casey. We've had volunteers fall in love with each other on a Horsey House Call and go on to get married. We had 2 volunteers. One got engaged. One proposed in a horse stall at one of our cowboy campouts, which was really cool. So we've had life-changing moments that all happened because that you can link back to Casey. And her family is proud beyond, ways to express that their daughter's life will live on, far beyond anything that they ever could have imagined. And so, but they've been wonderful to me. They have supported me and embraced everything, every wild, weird idea I've had. They've really allowed me to take this organization and run with it and grow it, and given me that license to take her name, and that trust that they've had in me to take her name and represent it with integrity has been something that I am eternally grateful to them for. They kind of stay out of my way, and they show up at the annual galas that we have and give a beautiful speech and talk up to the supporters and express their gratefulness. And it's a wonderful, beautiful friendship that we have, and I truly love them.
I love that. Well, Molly, I hope you give yourself a little bit more credit. As we talked about earlier, you have created just the most beautiful thing and such an incredible camp that is impacting so many lives. And I can't even imagine what it's like for Casey's family just to see the legacy of Casey live on. With
that, I do have to say, and I'm sure you have volunteered before. I don't believe that it's ever, it's not altruistic. What I do, the gentleman who wrote that anonymous $50,000 check, like that guy deserves a lot of accolades because he wanted no recognition. He didn't even want a thank you card because he didn't want the stamp, wasted on that. And I see that. I am so lucky because I get to be exposed to those kinds of people every day. I get to see the very worst of things, like a child passing, which is devastating and never gets easier. And I also get to see the very best, like people like this gentleman, this angel, and so many others like that who have so selflessly given their time and their money and their support and their advocacy for us, and the brave children that I get to witness. I do not want to say, though, that I don't get more from the family, from the experience than the families and the kids. I have more fun, and I think all of our volunteers do have, and the kids have a lot of fun. I don't want to minimize that, but the volunteers and the staff, we have more fun. And the feeling that we get from giving this is not, I mean, it's like we are so emotionally compensated. It's like we're billionaires, you know? So, while I'm very proud and I'm, I want to stay humble and stay, know that this is something that I just am so fortunate and lucky to really be a part of. And I don't know how I got so lucky. I think maybe in a last life I did something really good or something, because I just think that my life landed me in the most incredible place. But I will say that what I get out of this is even more than what our kids get out of it. So, and I would recommend to all of your listeners that if you don't volunteer, or you never have, or haven't regularly gotten into something that really excites you, that has to do with giving back, try it, because the feeling that you get from giving back is so much more than you would ever expect. You think you're helping somebody else, but really in that you help. And I think all of us got to see that during this pandemic, when we were able to do things like donate blood, or do a supply drive, or however anybody decided to roll up their sleeves and get to work and help, those on the front line, those are, even the grocery store workers. I mean, there's a sense of pride that all of us were able to get out of being a part of the helper, being a helper and getting, being a part of the solution. And, I hope that is, if your listeners take anything from this, I hope it's that, to encourage them to volunteer and give back their community, because you can only dream up what might come from that and how good it will feel for you.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. A lot of times in my life, I've been I'm a person that says yes to too many things. I have trouble saying no. So I always have been someone that fills my plate up a lot. And a lot of the times that's been with like volunteer stuff. And sometimes people in my life will say, hey, you're giving up something else by saying yes to that. And then every time I'm like, but this is what I enjoy doing. Like, I don't want to sit down and watch TV. I don't want to, even sometimes giving up hanging out with someone or something like that to get to volunteer is just it's just such an incredible opportunity. And like you said, you just get so much more back. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it is important for everyone to go out and do something for someone else. Because I've heard it before that when you're having a bad day, get up, go do something for someone else, go do something kind, just give your time and energy to someone else, and your entire mood will change.
Absolutely. Could not agree with that more.
Yeah. Well, Molly, thank you so much for sharing all about Camp Casey and all that you're doing with that. I really appreciated hearing it, and I'm so excited to share it as well. But for the end of podcast questions, what is the best or most recent book that you've read, if you have time to read?
Oh, well, I will say it was funny, because I was thinking about, I don't know, I read a lot. I read whatever is in front of me. I love to read. It's something that actually, when my brain is on overdrive, it's what calms me down and allows me to actually to decompress. So I don't read, but it's embarrassing, because I read like trash. I like to read the juicy novels that
me too.
shut my brain off. So as much as I would like to say, I read the self-help book. Although I will say I read Michelle Obama's book, and I loved that.
Good, yeah.
But it was directly followed by the Jessica Simpson book. And I loved that. It was so funny, because I remember the Obama book took me like 3 months to get through, because I had to process everything and really think about it. And I really took time to really dive into every sentence, and it was so eloquent. And then Jessica Simpson took me like a weekend, but it was so juicy, and I was like, John Mayer did what? So, of course, I love anything like that, but I'm a huge fiction fan. I did jump on the Crawdads bandwagon.
Yeah.
I loved it. I cried when that ended. My sister hated that book, and I just loved it. I kind of like couldn't understand why she didn't enjoy it, because I loved it so much. But and I read the the Glennon Doyle self-help book that everybody is talking about.
I haven't read
Untamed.
that yet, but I've been meaning to.
That was pretty good, although there were some moments in that too that I was sort of rolling my eyes at but I did like most of it. And then I'm currently reading Mrs. Everything by Jennifer Weiner.
Yes, I've read that.
It's wonderful. It takes place in Detroit, and it's a Jewish family, and I'm Jewish, and so it was just very. It's just a fun. Again, I just love fiction, and I love this one's sort of historical fiction though too. Oh, and I loved The Paris Wife. That was a historical fiction that I read recently, and that was all about Ernest Hemingway's sexcapades and how he was kind of a scoundrel, and it was really juicy. And I read. Oh gosh, I mean, I could laundry list so many books that I but mostly it's beach reads and things that are just going to take my brain. I will say, when you talk about overfilling your plate, I'm the queen of that. I think a lot of women in particular are, which is like a blessing and a curse for us. But I will say that I use reading as a way to just shut my brain off and decompress. And while I'd love to say that I'm reading nothing but, books that are going to better me and make me into a stronger, more fit person, most of the time what I'm reading is like the trashiest stuff that's just going to get my brain to stop thinking about anything productive and just kind of have fun.
I appreciate you saying that, because I sometimes feel like guilt about like, oh, why am I reading this? But it's like, I enjoy it. I don't really watch TV. So it's like other people watch kind of trashy TV shows. This is just my trashy TV show in a book form.
Yeah. My husband is a guitarist. He's a pretty talented musician. And a few years ago, I picked up a ukulele and I just started kind of messing around on that. And I started learning an instrument. And that ended up evolving to now, and I stupidly made the mistake of thinking that since I knew a 4-stringed instrument, I could play any 4-stringed instrument. So I bought myself a bass guitar, totally 2 different instruments, nothing at all, like the ukulele. But I will say, you talk about not watching TV. We sort of replaced our evening TV, which is just nothing but, panic and trash usually when you turn on the TV. And we now nightly will have a drink together and we will play instruments. And it has been something that has really enhanced my life. He's always been a musician, and I sort of learned this now as it was a really cool lesson to know that as a grown up, somebody in her 30s can pick up an instrument and learn that. And I just think it's a testament to that we can never stop learning and stretching our brain and having those kinds of goals in front of us. And if you have the consistency and the discipline and the patience, then you really can do just about anything. So I will say that I think that that's been a really cool life lesson that I've sort of learned later on in my life, or in my at least middle age now, that it's not too old to learn something new.
Yeah, that's a good lesson to pick up. So who or what in your life is illuminating right now?
You know what? Since I've been spending so much time with these gentlemen at the Buffalo Soldiers, I would like to throw the credit there. I am just so fascinated with these gentlemen who have never stopped working. A lot of them worked on the line or had a gentleman I see most often there was a Detroit police officer for 30 years. And these guys have worked and worked and worked. Then instead of retiring, they now co-op this farm where with the intention of bringing in community children to teach them about a very important part of their history. And I just am so impressed, and I learn something new every time I'm there. I've been volunteering my time out there mucking stalls and just getting to know these guys and hearing their stories. And we come from 2 completely different generations and different cultures, and it's been nothing but illuminating every minute I spend out there. So I would say I'd give my buddies over at the Buffalo Soldiers Heritage Association the honor of knowing of they being who is most illuminating in my life right now.
And what is an organization that you'd like to illuminate?
Why don't I go ahead and piggyback right there, the Buffalo Soldiers Heritage Association in Detroit, Michigan. They're a 501c3, and they are committed to spreading awareness about the rich history of the Buffalo Soldiers cavalry in the U.S. military, and the important role that it played in really paving the way for desegregation. I I think it's really a cool portal into, ancestral pride for a lot of African Americans in our country to know that it was because of the Buffalo Soldiers that, we were able to desegregate the military and then eventually schools and then the society that we all live in. And but they played a large role in our national park systems and the trails out there. And I just think I never knew this. This was not taught to me in schools. I've only known this now, learning from my, 70 and 80-year-old buddies running this farm, about this history that is, kind of kept out of the history books that I learned from. So, I'm very passionate about their mission, and I'm excited to not only collaborate with them, but see them continuously succeed and help the very important population that they're serving.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And what is your one message to send to the world?
Oh, I would say, keep at it. Stay tenacious and stay driven. And when somebody tells you no, find somebody who will tell you yes. Be as annoying as possible until you get what you are trying to get, and just work really, really hard, and try to surround yourself with others who know more than you do.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Molly Reeser. If you want to continue to follow along with all that Molly and Camp Casey are doing, you can find them on Instagram at Camp Casey MI, or on Facebook at Camp Casey, and on their website at camp-casey.org. And while you're at it, we would love if you continued to follow along with all that the Illuminate Podcast is doing. You can find us on Twitter at Illuminate_pod, or on Instagram at the Illuminate Podcast, and as well as subscribing to the podcast on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And as I mentioned during the episode, we have an end of year podcast survey that we would love if you filled out. We do want to hear from you to help better the show and keep bringing you quality content. So I have the link to that in the show notes and would love if you took a few minutes to fill that out. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed my conversation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.